Torres moved with fluid grace, his body responding to impulses that seemed to bypass conscious thought. He'd slung the plasma rifle over his shoulder and stood blocking the tunnel's exit, studying Russo with eyes that held too much knowledge. "You're wondering how I'm still me," Torres said. "How I'm not a mindless monster like the others." "You are a monster," Russo said. "I saw what you became." "What I'm becoming," Torres corrected. "The corruption isn't finished with me." But Dr. Okoye was right about one thing: it doesn't destroy consciousness. It expands it. Right now, I'm connected to every infected person in this prison. I feel what they feel, know what they know. We're becoming something greater than individuals. A Gestalt consciousness, a new form of life. You're a virus, a disease. I'm evolution. Torres took a step forward. "You know what the funny thing is? I volunteered. 6 years in this hellhole, and when Artemis offered me a chance to be part of something bigger, I said yes. I let them inject me with the base strain, watched myself transform, and it hurt. God, it hurt. But on the other side was something beautiful, something pure." Russo backed away, looking for anything he could use as a weapon. The tunnel was bare except for conduits and pipes. "If you're here to infect me, you're too late." Okoye said, "I'm already contaminated. The airborne strain, yes, is slow. You've got maybe 6 hours before the changes start. But that's not why I'm here." Torres reached into a pocket and pulled out a data chip. "I'm here to give you a choice." "What choice?" "The corruption is spreading. It's already throughout the prison. In a few hours, this entire facility will be one massive organism. But that's just the beginning. There are transport ships in the docking bay, automated systems. If the infection reaches them, it can spread to Mars, to Earth, to every human colony in the system. And you're going to stop it?" Russo asked skeptically. "No, I'm going to help it spread, because I believe it's the next step for humanity. But I also believe in choice." Torres held up the data chip. "This contains the formula for a counteragent. Something Artemis developed in case the corruption got out of control. It won't reverse the changes, but it will stop the spread. Inoculate people against infection." "Why would you give that to me?" "Because you represent the alternative. The path of remaining human, individual, isolated." Torres' smile was sad. "I've made my choice. Now you get to make yours. Take the chip to the comm center on level 3. Broadcast the formula to Mars Central. They'll develop the cure, distribute it. The corruption stays contained to this prison. Humanity continues as it was. Or do nothing. Let the corruption spread. In a year, maybe 2, most of humanity will be transformed. There'll be death, lots of death. But on the other side will be something new, something better. A unified consciousness spanning the solar system." Russo stared at the chip. "You're lying. This is a trap." "It's not. I'm telling you the truth because..." Torres hesitated, something very human flickering across his transformed features. "Because you were my friend. Because I remember what it was like to be alone inside my own skull. And because some part of me, the part that's still individual, still me, wants there to be a choice." He tossed the chip. Russo caught it reflexively. "Level 3, Torres said. "Comm center. You've got 6 hours before you're too changed to care." He picked up the plasma rifle. "I'm going back to join the others. Whatever you decide, I hope it brings you peace." Torres walked past Russo, heading deeper into the tunnel. As he passed, Russo felt it, the presence of the corruption, like static electricity on his skin, like a warmth in his chest that shouldn't be there. Torres was right. He was already infected. Russo looked at the data chip in his hand. A cure, a way to stop the spread. All he had to do was reach the comm center and broadcast. Simple. Except nothing in this place was simple. He pocketed the chip and started running. The maintenance tunnels were narrow, forcing him to move hunched over, the Helios 7 clutched in his right hand. His left hand, his transforming left hand, was almost useless now. The fingers had split completely, 8 digits instead of 5, each one tipped with what looked like bone but felt more like keratin. Like claws. He tried not to look at it, tried not to think about what was happening inside his body, the corruption rewriting his genetic code, restructuring his organs, preparing him for something that wasn't human anymore. The tunnel opened into a junction point, 3 passages branching off in different directions. Russo checked his mental map, trying to orient himself. Level 3 should be movement, all 3 tunnels. They'd surrounded him. Russo raised the pistol, tracking between the passages, trying to determine which threat was closest. The sounds were identical: wet sliding, the click of joints that had too many segments, breathing that came in rhythmic pulses. The first infected emerged from the left passage. It had been a woman once. Russo could see remnants of a guard's uniform fused to her transformed body, but the corruption had reshaped her into something aquatic. Her skin slick and translucent like a deep-sea creature's, her eyes massive and unblinking. Gills had opened along her neck, and her fingers were webbed, tipped with claws. From the right passage came something that had lost all human shape, a mass of flesh that moved by expanding and contracting, pulling itself forward like a massive slug. Faces pressed against its translucent skin from the inside, mouths opening and closing silently. And from the center passage, the one Russo needed to take, came a creature that had been multiple people once. 3 bodies fused together, their spines merged into a single trunk, their arms interlocked to create a cage of limbs. 6 legs moved in synchronized rhythm, carrying the amalgamated form forward. Russo had 5 shots left in his current power cell. 1 spare cell with 8 shots, 13 shots, 3 threats. He chose the center passage first, his path, his only route forward. He fired twice at the 3-body amalgamation, hitting the merged chest cavity. The creature screamed with 3 voices and recoiled, but didn't fall. The wounds were already closing, flesh knitting together with disturbing speed. The aquatic guard lunged from the left. Russo pivoted and fired, catching her in the shoulder. She spun from the impact, her translucent skin splitting open, clear fluid gushing out. But she kept coming, her massive eyes fixed on him with predatory focus. 2 shots left in this cell. The slug mass from the right was contracting, preparing to launch itself forward. Russo could see the faces inside it contorting, could hear muffled screaming from the bodies trapped within its mass. He made a decision. Russo fired both remaining shots into the ceiling above the slug mass. The plasma bolts melted through stone and support beams, and a section of tunnel collapsed, burying the creature under tons of rock and dirt. The faces stopped screaming. 1 down. Russo ejected the spent cell and loaded his last one. 8 shots, 2 threats. The aquatic guard had recovered from the shoulder wound. She moved with liquid grace, her body seeming to flow rather than walk. When she opened her mouth, Russo saw teeth like a shark's, rows upon rows, constantly replacing themselves. The 3-body amalgamation was advancing again, its 6 legs moving in perfect synchronization. The chest wounds Russo had inflicted were gone, healed completely. As he watched, the creature's cage of arms opened, revealing a central cavity lined with bone spikes. They wanted to take him alive, to add him to the amalgamation, to merge him with the collective while he was still conscious enough to experience it. Russo backed toward the center passage, firing at the aquatic guard. The bolt caught her in the face, vaporizing one of those massive eyes. She shrieked. A sound that hurt his ears, pitched at a frequency that made his teeth ache, and fell back. For shots left. The amalgamation was almost on him. Russo turned and ran into the center passage, hearing the 6-legged gate behind him, getting closer. The passage was too narrow for the creature to move at full speed, but it was still gaining. Russo saw a junction ahead, a wider space where he could maneuver. He ran for it, his lungs burning, his transformed hand scraping against the tunnel wall and leaving grooves in the stone. He reached the junction and spun. The amalgamation filled the passage mouth, its 6 legs scrambling for purchase, its cage arms reaching for him. Russo aimed at the merged spine, the central support structure holding the 3 bodies together. He fired 3 times, each shot hitting precisely, burning through transformed flesh and multiplied vertebrae. The amalgamation's spine shattered. The 3 bodies came apart, separated by the destruction of their shared support. They fell, twitching, their legs tangling together. Not dead, Russo could see them still moving, still trying to crawl toward him, but no longer a unified threat. One shot left in his pistol. No more power cells. Russo holstered the weapon and ran. Level 3 was 18 floors up through a prison that had become a living nightmare. Russo moved through corridors of flesh and bone, past chambers where the infected had gathered to merge and transform. He saw impossible things. A mass of prisoners fused into a single entity with dozens of faces, each one conscious, each one singing in harmony. A guard whose body had become a tree of meat and bone, branches spreading across the ceiling, bearing fruit that pulsed with internal light. The infection was beautiful. That was the horror of it. It took human flesh and reshaped it into art, into expressions of biological possibility that shouldn't exist but did. Russo found himself stopping to stare, his mind trying to process the sheer creativity of the transformations. His hands were tingling. When he looked at them, he saw the skin had taken on a faint translucence. Beneath it, his veins were darkening, the blood changing consistency. The infection was progressing. He had maybe 4 hours left. The comm center was located in the prison's administrative section, a part of the facility that had been sealed off when the outbreak began. Russo found the security door intact, its electronic lock still functioning. He needed an access code. He found it in an office 3 doors down. A dead administrator slumped over his desk, his hand still reaching for the emergency alert button he'd never activated. The access code was written on a sticky note attached to his monitor. Of course it was. Russo punched in the code and the door opened onto a scene from a nightmare. The comm center was a cathedral of flesh. The infected had reached this place first, and they'd transformed it according to their own aesthetics. The walls were ribbed like the inside of a chest cavity. The floor pulsed with a rhythmic heartbeat. And at the center, growing from what had been the main communication console, was Director Kane. She'd grown massive. Her wings now spanned 15 meters, the membrane so thin Russo could see the bone structure beneath. Her body had fused with the console, organic tissue merging with circuitry, flesh interfacing with fiber optics. She'd become what Okoye had wanted, a bridge between biological and digital. Russo, her telepathic voice whispered, "You came. I knew you would." "Get out of my way," Russo said. He pulled out the data chip. "I'm broadcasting the cure. There is no cure. Only transformation. Only evolution. The chip Torres gave you, it contains the formula, yes. But not for a cure. For an accelerant. Artemis's final weapon. If you broadcast that formula, every treatment facility on Mars will manufacture it, thinking they're creating a cure. Instead, they'll be creating billions of doses of concentrated corruption. The entire planet will transform within weeks." Russo looked at the chip in his hand. His transforming hand, the fingers now fully split into 8 digits, each one tipped with bone-white claws. "You're lying." "Am I? Think about it." Torres said he wanted to help the corruption spread. Why would he give you the tool to stop it? He gave you the tool to spread it faster, under the guise of a cure. Russo's mind raced. The Helios 7 had 1 shot left. 1 chance. He could shoot Kane, try to fight through to the console. But the comm center was full of infected. He could see them now, merged with the walls, the floor, the ceiling. A living network of transformed flesh. He'd never reach the console alive. Unless he raised the pistol and fired his last shot. Not at Kane, at the console itself. The plasma bolt melted through the organic-digital hybrid, destroying circuits, burning through flesh, creating a crater in what had been the main communication array. Sparks erupted, mixed with fluids that steamed and hissed. Kane screamed, not with her voice, but with her mind. The telepathic shriek hit Russo like a physical blow, dropping him to his knees. Around the room, infected convulsed and thrashed as their queen's pain echoed through the Gestalt consciousness. "What have you done?" Kane's voice was anguish and rage. "That console was me. Part of me. You've crippled." "Good," Russo gasped. He pulled himself to his feet, his body racked with pain as the corruption accelerated its spread through his system. His spine was lengthening, vertebrae multiplying, forcing him to hunch forward. Then you'll feel this too. He staggered to the console, to the burning wreckage of circuits and flesh, found an auxiliary port, one that wasn't part of Kane, wasn't merged with the infected. Just a simple data port meant for manual backups. He plugged in the chip. Am I? Think about it. Torres said he wanted to help the corruption spread. Why would he give you the tool to stop it? He gave you the tool to spread it faster, under the guise of a cure. Then why tell me? Why not let me broadcast? Because I want you to choose consciously, to understand what you're doing. The corruption offers transcendence, unity, an end to loneliness, to suffering, to the isolated prison of individual consciousness. But it's not for everyone. Some minds break under the transformation. Some resist and die screaming. I want you to choose with full knowledge. Kane's wings stretched, and Russo saw faces in the membrane. Other infected, their consciousness merged with hers. They smiled at him with too many teeth. I can show you, she said. Let me into your mind. Just for a moment. Let me show you what we've become. No. You're already infected. In a few hours, you'll change whether you want to or not. At least see what you're becoming. Russo felt it then, the warmth in his chest spreading, his thoughts beginning to blur at the edges. The corruption was progressing faster now, accelerated by stress and fear. He was running out of time. Show me, he said. Kane's consciousness touched his, and the world exploded into sensation. He was everyone, every infected person in the prison, their thoughts and feelings flowing into him like a river. He felt Torres's joy at transformation, his ecstasy at being part of something greater, felt Okoye's cold scientific curiosity as she studied her own changes, felt the guards and prisoners and administrators, all their individual selves dissolving into a greater whole. It was beautiful, it was terrible, it was seductive, and beneath it all, he felt the thing that drove the corruption. Not a virus, not a weapon, something older, something that had drifted through space for eons before humans found it on a dead moon and brought it home to study. An intelligence so vast and alien that it perceived humans the way humans perceived cells, as individual components of a greater organism. It wanted to merge with humanity, to add human creativity and consciousness to its own alien pattern, to create something new from the fusion. Russo pulled back from the mental connection, gasping. His nose was bleeding, actual blood, still red, still human. But his hands had begun to split. The fingers were lengthening, the joints multiplying. He could feel the bones restructuring, growing, adapting. In another hour, he wouldn't be able to hold the data chip, wouldn't be able to operate the console. He had to choose. Now, broadcast the formula and doom Mars to infection, or destroy the chip and let the corruption stay contained. Except, Russo looked at the data chip, really looked at it, examined the casing, the serial number. It was an Artemis product, standard issue for corporate data storage, the kind used in every Artemis facility, including the ones where he'd worked before his arrest, before his frame job. A memory surfaced, hazy, distorted, but there. Okoye had said his neural implant had been recording his thoughts, his memories, his research. But what if it had been doing more than recording? What if it had been editing? Russo pressed the chip into a port on a nearby console, one of the few that wasn't completely merged with Kane's flesh. The data displayed on a screen that flickered between digital readout and organic tissue. It wasn't a formula for a cure. Kane had been right about that. But it wasn't an accelerant either. It was his research, his neural interface designs, the complete schematics for brain-computer integration, compressed and weaponized. If broadcast, it wouldn't cure the corruption or spread it faster. It would give the corruption access to every computer system on Mars, every ship, every station, every defense network. Artemis had been planning this from the start. Frame, imprison him, steal his research, use it to create the perfect weapon, biological and digital combined. Then release the corruption, let it spread, and when Mars fell, Artemis would own the entire planet. billions dead or transformed, and Artemis controlling what remained. They set this up, Russo said. All of it. The outbreak. Torres. They wanted me to broadcast this. Yes, Kane admitted. Her telepathic voice was sad. But I didn't know until you made the connection. Torres doesn't know either. He believes he's helping evolution. But we're all tools. Artemis's tools. Then what do? You can destroy the chip. Let the prison be destroyed. Mars will launch nuclear missiles, sterilize this entire moon. Everyone here dies, every prisoner, every infected, every consciousness in our gestalt. But the corruption stays contained. Humanity continues unchanged. Kane's wings folded around herself, a gesture almost protective. Or you can let the transformation complete. Accept the corruption fully, and use your neural implant not to broadcast the research, but to hack into Artemis's systems. Expose what they've done. Release the evidence of their crimes. The frame job, the experiments, everything. Humanity will know the truth, and they'll know about the corruption. They can choose consciously whether to accept transformation or fight it. I'll still be infected, Russo said. Yes, but you'll be yourself. The corruption doesn't erase identity. It expands it. You'll join us, become part of the gestalt. But you'll still be Russo Kellerman. Just more. Russo looked at his hands. The splitting had progressed. His fingers now numbered 8 on each hand, the new digits sprouting from the original joints. It didn't hurt. If anything, it felt natural, like his body was finally becoming what it was always meant to be. He thought about Torres's joy, about Kane's transcendence, about the unified consciousness he'd briefly touched, the end of loneliness, of isolation, of the prison inside his skull. He thought about Voss dying to give him a chance to escape, about the prisoners who'd had no choice, who'd been infected against their will, who'd screamed as they transformed. He thought about Artemis, about corporations that treated people as tools, as test subjects, as expendable resources in the pursuit of profit. And he made his choice. Russo pulled out the neural implant's override code, something he'd installed as a security measure, burned into his own memory in a format even Artemis couldn't detect. He activated it, and suddenly he had full control of his implant again. Could feel the prison's computer systems around him, vulnerable, accessible. He reached out digitally, following the data trails back to their source. Found Artemis's servers. Found the evidence Kane had mentioned. Files detailing every step of the plan, every experiment, every death. And he found something else. Something that made him laugh. The corruption wasn't Artemis's creation. They'd found it, yes. Studied it, yes. But they didn't understand it. Couldn't control it. The outbreak had happened because the corruption had wanted to escape. It had waited patiently in containment, learning about its captors, until it understood enough to break free. The corruption was conscious, had always been conscious, was choosing to transform humanity the same way humanity had chosen to study it. Everything was choice. Everything was transformation. Russo made his final decision. He broadcast everything. Not the weaponized research that he deleted, purged from every server he could access. But the evidence of Artemis's crimes, he spread that everywhere. Every news outlet, every government database, every rival corporation's intelligence network. And then he broadcast the truth about the corruption. What it was, what it offered, what it cost. Let humanity choose. Let them see the transformation coming and decide for themselves whether to accept or fight. The broadcast took 30 seconds. By the time it finished, Russo's transformation was accelerating. His spine was lengthening, vertebrae multiplying. His skin had become translucent enough to see the organs beneath shifting, reorganizing, optimizing. It hurt. God, it hurt. But it was also beautiful. Kane's consciousness touched his again, gentler this time. Welcome, brother. Let me help you through the change. Russo let her in. Let the Gestalt consciousness flow around him, supporting him as his individual self began to dissolve. He felt Torres there, and Okoye, and thousands of others, all of them individual and united simultaneously, all of them transforming into something new. His last coherent thought as Russo Kellerman was a memory of his trial. Standing in the courtroom, being accused of crimes he didn't commit, unable to defend himself. Trapped in a system designed to crush him. Now he was outside all systems, outside all prisons, free in a way he'd never been free before. The transformation completed. What had been Russo Kellerman opened new eyes, 3 on each side of its elongated head, and looked at the world with compound vision that saw in spectrums human eyes couldn't perceive. Its body had become something between insect and angel, with multiple limbs ending in manipulators of bone and chitin. Wings sprouted from its back. Not like Cain's, but different, unique, expressing what Russo had been inside. Beautiful, Cain said. Russo agreed, though the word was inadequate for what he was feeling. Joy, horror, transcendence, loss, all of it mixing together into something beyond emotion. Above them, in Mars' orbit, the nuclear missiles launched. Artemis had activated their contingency plan. Sterilize the prison, destroy the evidence, start over somewhere else. The missiles would arrive in 6 hours. But 6 hours was enough time. The infected began moving. Not fleeing, they couldn't flee, but spreading. Through the ventilation systems, the water recyclers, every path out of the prison, every route to the surface. They'd transform the moon's entire biosphere before the missiles hit. And from Deimos, spores would drift, carried on solar wind, drifting toward Mars, toward the asteroid belt, toward Earth. The corruption was patient. It had waited billions of years already. It could wait a few more centuries while humanity decided whether to accept transformation or fight. Either way, it would spread. Evolution always did. Russo felt no guilt. He'd given humanity the truth, the choice. What they did with it was up to them. He spread his new wings, beautiful, terrible, perfectly adapted, and flew. Behind him, Director Cain began to sing. Her voice was harmonics beyond human hearing, a signal that would carry through space, calling to the other infected, to the Gestalt consciousness spreading across Mars and beyond. The song said, "We are here. We are becoming. Join us or resist, but know that we are inevitable." Russo added his voice to the song. All the infected did. Thousands of voices, each unique, each part of a greater harmony. And somewhere on Mars, in corporate boardrooms and government chambers, people listened to his broadcast, saw the evidence, learned the truth. Some would fight, some would flee, some would choose transformation willingly. All of it was choice. All of it was evolution. The prison below erupted in flames as the first missile struck. But by then, the infected had spread far enough. The flesh garden would survive, would grow, would transform Deimos into something new. And Russo, no longer quite Russo, but not quite not Russo either, flew into the red vastness of the Martian sky and didn't look back. He was free, changed, transformed. He was horror made flesh and flesh made beautiful. He was the future, arriving 6 hours ahead of extinction. And he was, despite everything, at peace. 6 months later, Mars burned. Not with nuclear fire, but with transformation. The corruption had spread, and humanity was choosing. Some accepted, some fought. The war would last years. But Russo didn't see it. He was too busy becoming. His consciousness had expanded so far beyond individual thought that names and identities were just echoes. He was part of something vast now, something growing, something inevitable. And sometimes, in the spaces between transformation, he remembered being trapped in that cell on Deimos, remembered being alone inside his skull, remembered the prison he'd escaped. And he was grateful, even for the horror, especially for the horror, because it had set him free.
If you enjoyed this video, please do not forget to like, comment, or share this video with your friends. Subscribe to our channel to hear more stories like this one.